As we approached the visitors' entrance, my aunt told us to take everything out of our pockets and take anything we had metal off. My mother's worst nightmare was that when we entered the building, we would have to undergo an involuntary strip search for drugs or weapons. We sat in the waiting area for at least an hour and a half. There was a huge line for the screening area where people and their bags were searched meticulously. When we finally entered the screening room, my mother's worst nightmare did not come to pass. We were merely patted down, but our bags were searched through and emptied out, and the contents laid out on the floor, and the objects verified. The process they went through to search our bags must have been repeated at least 5 times, each time they searched for secret compartments. Finally, we could go into the visiting room. Despite my stereotypical beliefs, I did not see my father through a transparent window, but he sat down at a square table with us. I vividly remember the setting of the visitor's room. It was a large square room with 2 security guards, both armed. One stood at one of the only 2 doors that led into or out of the room. The guard stood at the door that led back out of the prison. The other door, which led back into the prison where the inmates stayed and remained unguarded, for obvious reasons. There's no fuss over a man who wants to fight his way back into prison. The other guard stood a little higher off the ground in a box, somewhat of an eagle eye, with a loaded rifle on the side of him, and a pistol holster on his waist. Both unfaltering, no sway in their stance, and no smirk on their face. Seeing them made the situation 10 times more serious, and the fact that everyone talking in the room was either a mother disappointed crying to their son, or a wife, a baby mama, complaining to their man how they weren't there for their child. There was an awkward silence for a moment. As my father first came out of the door that led into the prison, he sat down, and although the silence did not last for more than a second or two, it seemed like a lifetime. My father looked so different. He had lost a lot of weight. It must have been the constant exercise and portion 3 meals a day. One stereotype that was proven to be true was the orange jumpsuit I saw convicts wear on television. My father greeted us, overly excited to see his only 2 sons. We jumped out of our seats to hug him. I almost cried, but since I was in a prison, I did not want to embarrass my father by seeming soft. My brother was going through the same dilemma because I saw his eyes water, but he too held it down. We sat down and talked. Not about one any serious subject, but about many little seemingly non-important ones. I didn't ask him what he did to get into prison until well into our conversation. We talked about how school went for my brother and I. He joked about how prison wasn't as bad as it seemed, and for a second, it didn't even seem like we were in prison. For a second, he wasn't wearing an orange jumpsuit. There weren't 2 armed guards, and there wasn't a serial number on my father's back. For a second, we were at my father's house, in his den, sitting on his couch, and everything was just how it used to be.